Since the turn of the 21st century, there's probably been no greater Cheltenham Festival star than Barry Geraghty, riding 43 winners between 2002 and his retirement in 2020, and associated during those years with a string of top winning equine names: Moscow Flyer, Sprinter Sacre, Bouvetdare, Kicking King, Bobsworth, to name but five. Bobsworth, a horse he also sold to the owner, so particularly associated with that one. And the same thing applies to a runner this year, which we'll hear more about in a moment. But first of all, Barry joining us from his home in County Meath. What's it like preparing for Cheltenham, but you're not going to be throwing your leg across any of the runners?
Cheers, Cornelius. It is different, but it's 2 years now since I finished, really, because my last rides were at Cheltenham, and albeit I didn't announce the retirement for a few months later, but I knew in Cheltenham this was pretty much the end. So it's been an adjustment, but at this stage, having been to Cheltenham for Trials Day, I was there at the November meeting, the October meeting. I had a good taste for racing as a spectator, and I loved it, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I think a sample of that was probably the Anorgamine Shishkin clash. The nervous excitement I had for that, just purely as a spectator, was brilliant. And it's that I'm really looking forward to at Cheltenham, seeing the results, seeing the superstars, everything that goes with the Cheltenham Festival.
There was a word you used in one interview as far as the referring to the festival. You get energy, you said, from the festival, but all that noise, all that action.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Just the buzz from the moment you walk in the gates. But Cheltenham does that even at the lesser meetings, but at the festival especially. Just the tension, the nervous energy, everything, the anticipation. Yeah, it's got every emotion going. So it really, the stakes are so high. Everyone wants success. Like it's our Olympics. It's a Ryder Cup. It's huge.
And before your first winner in 2002, when you were a young jockey, was it quite nervous? Was there a lot of nervousness as well?
There would have been. Yeah, there's no point saying otherwise. Yes, there would. And with age, that becomes, you're back again and back again. There's a natural anxiety to get a score on the board. And the sooner you get that, you can just let a little bit of gas out of the cylinder. You can relax into your job. You have a winner. It's a successful raid once you have won. But there's no doubt. So in the early years, there would be more nervousness. You're experiencing these days for the first time or second or third. So you just don't have that maybe level, cool head that a more senior rider will have.
And sort of sleepless nights and running over races in your head. Your first winner was on Moscow Flyer, who was a real legend and went very, very quickly around the track. So you must almost sort of, in the nights leading up to the festival, living every stride of the race, I guess.
Yeah, but even that's something that would have continued right through my career, and I'm sure it is with lots of other riders. You hear about visualization. So you were visualizing 20 years ago before it was announced to the racing world anyway. So you're very much like his Tingle Creeks, for example. I remember those particularly, where you're going through every moment, every what if, and that's the case for any major race. You'll have done it 100 times through your mind, driving the car. You'd just be having thoughts. So I can't say I ever suffered sleepless nights, but there would be more tension as a 22-year-old going in than there would be at a 32 or heading for 40.
And I've mentioned Moscow Flyer and Sprinter Sacre in particular, because there's a long list, clearly, of horses on which you won. But those two were real stars of their eras.
Oh, they were brilliant. And Moscow, to get him at an early stage of my career, when I was only 20, when I won a grade 1 on him for the first time, and then for him to go on and be such a super chaser. Now, he put me on the floor a few times. I put him on the floor a few times. But he was brilliant. He went 4 seasons unbeaten over fences, which I think is, that's testament to how classy he was, how durable he was. He was hard on himself because he clouted fences, so he hit the deck a few occasions. So he didn't have an easy time, but he was well up for it. And then Sprinter was probably the opposite. He was all flash and flamboyance, and he was, if you talk about energy, he had energy in spades. An amazing horse, and very lucky just to have had them, and definitely to have them at different times. I'd hate to have had to try and choose between them.
You say amazing horses with amazing followings as well. So your every movement on those two horses, particularly at Cheltenham or wherever they were racing, was being followed by, not just that, probably millions of eyes.
Oh, brilliant! And personally, I love that level of pressure and expectation, because you are riding the superstar, and I'd rather be on the superstar than be trying to beat the superstar. So it was a privileged position to be heading out on a 1-3 shot in the Champion Chase for Tingle Creek. So I was lucky, and I suppose I relished that pressure on that occasion. So it was really exciting times too. Amazing horses.
I suppose the top sports people, whether you're a jockey or a footballer or a golfer or whatever, if you can't relish those pressure occasions, then that's probably not a plus for your game, is it?
I'd imagine so. It's an FA Cup final, it's Premier League, it's Champions League, whatever is your sport. If it doesn't get your blood up, if you don't want that more than anything, it's what you need, and what maybe sets people apart. Because I'd say, only stepping away from racing in the last couple of years, that you realise how you are immersed in it 24/7, and how your mind is floating away in different races at different occasions when you should be paying more attention to maybe who's in the room. So it is consuming, but I think you need to be consumed, because you talk with visualization and these races, you don't know what moment of the day it could come into your head about a what if, and not a what if in a nervous way, just going through a list of potentials and just and preparing yourself for that moment on the big day, because the decision is instant, and unless you either have some experience of it or you visualize it, the decision just mightn't be as easy.
So am I imagining you occasionally driving along, mind your own business, doing whatever you're doing, and then suddenly you've got to ride, let's say, Bobsworth in the Cheltenham Gold Cup next week? You think, "Ooh, that's a thought."
A bit like that, a little bit like that, yeah. And I can't say I remember moments, but it is. But I think you need that focus. You need that thought process. I'd imagine any sports person. It's hard to practice it. It's not like Johnny Wilkinson or David Beckham in their day practicing frees or penalties or whatnot. You can't set up that moment. So the only place you can live it is in your mind. And it's a process, and it's definitely one that you would benefit from. So at what point of the day or night, usually day, I wouldn't say the night too often, but it would have been a constant a clock ticking.
And two more thoughts before we move on to this year's festival. One, when you've won a race at the festival and you've got tens of thousands of people there, especially on a fancied horse, you go up the hill to all that noise, you go past the winning line, and then you come back to interviews and walk along the front of the packed stands. Can you just, for those of us who aren't ever going to experience that experience, that noise, that lift, that win, just sort of talk us through it?
Oh, it's amazing. It's what you dream of. And the familiar faces that pop up every so often. As you're coming down past the stands and the walkways, you're turning into preparing. But and when that music comes on, if you win a feature race, that's, it just puts the hairs in the back of your neck. It's spine tingling. It's everything. It's what you want. It's, as you say, a kid dreaming of scoring goals, or, as I say, whatever your sport is, this is your dream. You're living your dream. And it is amazing.
And that last festival, when you knew you were going to retire, and it turned out to be a very good festival as well for you, you're by that stage older, more senior jockey. Did you drink it all in, knowing perfectly well that was going to be the last time you were going to do it?
I did. I really did. So like that, you're going into it on blank. You're on zero, so you need to get a score on the board. Luckily for me, first one up was Epatant, the Champion Hurdle. And to get one of the features in the bag on your last year, I crossed the line. I'd say they could hear me howling in Cheltenham town. I was ecstatic. And lads were looking at me, wondering why was I so excited, why so much emotion? Because over the years, especially the latter end, not that you become familiar, but it's part of your focus that you don't lose your mind in excitement, because there is the next day. there is the next race. See, you hold your focus and you hold your composure, where I was happy just to let it off that year, know that this is the end. And as the winners kept coming, I kept just soaking it in and celebrating, because it was, it was just what I dreamt of, to finish the way it finished with such a good week.
And was it tempting actually to retire then? Obviously, there were more festivals to come. So I guess that was in your mind as well. You being a top jockey, quite greedy as well. You didn't want to let any possibilities go away.
Exactly. Myself and Paula here, my wife, we discussed it back in January, I suppose. And I live about 6 miles from Fairyhouse, and that's close to where I grew up as well. So Fairyhouse at Easter was an option, but as you say, the greed was keeping me for Punchestown. But all of those things were taken away with COVID. So I was tempted when Mick Fitz handed the mic up to me after winning the county hurdle on my final ride. But I said, no, I'll hold fire for that reason. And in truth, it actually gave me a great chance, because 2 weeks later, I'm thinking, do I need to retire? This is all too good. You know, I'm walking away from what's going brilliantly. And then a few weeks after that, again, I realized, no, this is the time. It was good to go. You won't sign off on a better note. So I pushed the greed away, and I thought, yeah, that was the time.
And Sprinter Sacre, Bouvet-Dare, Bobsworth, they were all big British trained winners. But Moscow Flyer, Kicking King in particular, but others as well, Irish trained. So when you're on an Irish fancy, a big, maybe an Irish banker at Cheltenham, and we all know the enthusiasm that gets amongst the Irish crowd, that must feel even better. You as a Pride Irishman yourself.
Yeah, I'd be lying to say otherwise. Like, the reception for Moscow Flyer in a champion chase, that is, you talk about lift the roof, Kicking King in the Gold Cup, it is to another level. Now, I suppose Ireland wouldn't have enjoyed the level of success then that they are now. So maybe they'll be a little bit more, I won't say complacent, but a little bit more used to the level of success. Maybe it'll be the British racing public that will be getting ultra excited if they win one of the championship races.
Well, you bring us on to that whole thing of Ireland against Britain. The total for Ireland in 2021, 23 races out of 28, just 5 to Britain. Everyone's got a theory on this. Why? You being right at the centre of things, what have you made of it?
Really, I think it's down to sourcing and it's buying the horses, because Nicky Henderson, Paul Nicholls, Philip Hobbs, John Joe Neal, these boys are there for years. They're farming Cheltenham winners, Grand Nationals, everything. They've proven themselves, so they all haven't lost the ability to train. Then you have Harry Fry, Dan Skelton, Ben Pauling. You have the new kids on the block are shaping up well too. So the ability is there to train the horses and produce the horses. But for example, Pied Piper and Vauban were both on the open market. 2 Irish trainers picked them up. So, and for 2 English owners. So the Irish racing is more competitive. So they're not coming over here for an easy time. So it must be, the prize money must play a part in that, I think. And so for me, it's the sourcing and keeping those horses in England is where the focus needs to be. But I would say that has picked up. I think the English trainers are really getting stuck in at the sales, the Cheltenham sales in particular, buying the point-to-pointers. There's a big supply of really Grade 1 top-class horses from the point-to-point field. So it's they seem to be up in the game and spending a few quid. So hopefully they'll reap the rewards in a few years' time.
What people have been quite gloomy about the possible scores this time around. Do you think a figure around about 23 is realistic for Ireland again? A figure around about 5 or 6 realistic for Britain again?
I hope not. I hope that the gap closes, but I would see it being closer to 20 for Ireland than anything. So, we want to see English racing as competitive as possible. There's no point in us just going over soaking it all in. We need competition. But I do see the gap closing, but I think it's going to take a few years before we get back to parity or back to where it used to be beforehand.
And of course, you've been around long enough to know when it was very much the balance was the other way around. Oh,
completely. And even as a kid, you're growing up and 1 winner, 2 winners, 3. I remember 1 year, I can't think what it was 5 Irish winners. This was unbelievable, unheard of. So 3 was a good year generally. So it's shoes very much so on the other foot.
I think in British racecourse bars, you often hear people saying, do you remember that year at the end of the 80s? Ireland had 0, and, which seems absolutely extraordinary now.
It does. And as I said, those single successes or 2s or 3s, yeah, they're distant memories.
Obviously, when you talk about you'd love to see British racing really getting going again, you speak as a racing fan, but also as a racing businessman as well, because you buy and sell horses. So Bobsworth, which you won on which you won the Cheltenham Gold Cup, you'd actually sold Bobsworth to the group of owners that had this horse with Nicky Henderson, hadn't you?
Yeah, so Nicky bought him, it's up my brother. We had him as a foal, and Nicky bought him off St Doncaster Sales as a 4-year-old. And he passed him on then to the Not Afraid partnership, who were made up of a good group of friends of his. So it's a little bit of a fairy tale, really, I suppose, how it all went. And he just went from strength to strength. He wasn't the most imposing individual, but he was just all heart. And he just kept winning. He wouldn't show an awful lot at home. There was nothing very much impressive about him at any stage, but he's just his will, very unassuming. He's just a lovely nature. So he's not unlike Constitution Hill. They're two very laid back characters.
And a fairy tale for you. You know, you won the Cheltenham Gold Cup on a horse you've seen since it was tiny.
Oh, it was brilliant. It was amazing. And the journey the whole way through to win at 3 festivals in a row was amazing. I suppose the Gold Cup day itself was a bit bittersweet, with John Thomas McNamara being badly injured the day before, and unfortunately John Thomas passed away a few years later. That was the cloud over the occasion, and it obviously that was going to take from it massively, but it was a fairy tale, and yeah, it's a nice one to reflect back on.
And you mentioned Constitution Hill, and Constitution Hill is another horse that you've sold to one of Nicky Henderson's owners. I love a horse, Barry, when it appears on social media, the emoji of an aeroplane is put next to it practically every time. And this horse, he was second in a point-to-point, but has since joining Nicky Henderson, and he's 2 out of 2, isn't he? And he is, you know, people have said, I haven't seen anything quite like this horse in the way that he's won those races at Sandown.
I know that he's been brilliant. So myself and Warren Ewing bought him as a foal. He ran a point-to-point. We had him at home here for 3 years, and even our kids had a sit on him and a bit of fun on him. He was so quiet as a 3-year-old, which is very unusual to have your then 4-year-old son or your 9-year-old daughter or 14-year-old daughter riding a 3-year-old around the school. So yeah, he was a gorgeous horse to have. He was a good individual, or is a good individual, and with a nice pedigree. So you were always hoping he was maybe a little bit different. And for him just to have gone on to do what he's done to date has been amazing. And really look forward to Tuesday and where he can go in the future, because touch wood, he seems to be a really exciting type.
And people will be able to Google this. If you Google Barry Geraghty, Constitution Hill, up comes this little bit of Instagram. I think it's on Instagram, probably other social media platforms as well. And this is your daughter, Orla, you leading, I think. And Orla, age what, riding Constitution Hill? Yeah,
so she was age 9, trotting around. I'm trying to drag him around as our eldest daughter, Schaefer, who was 14 at the time. She's doing the video and trying to give him a bit of a giddy up at the same time. So it was a bit of fun to have with the kids. And as I say, lovely memories and lovely footage to have. And I don't have that of many others, because he was just such a laid back character. And it's hopefully the fairy tale goes on with him.
And how unusual is that for a 9-year-old to be able to be riding a horse like that, that's ending up at Cheltenham in these circumstances? What does that say about his temperament?
Well, it's just a level of how relaxed and laid back he is, because I'd say it's unheard of. I've never done it before with any of the kids. It would be maybe around the horse as such, but never up on a 3-year-old. A 3-year-old is, yeah, he's highly strung and he's likely to do anything. But this fella was so switched off. Orla she was nagging me, can have a go, and eventually I gave in. So it's a lovely bit of footage to have.
And I love the thought that your other daughter was going, giddy up, get on with it, go a bit quicker.
Exactly, and that's how he was. And yeah, so you're afraid, you would normally be afraid to put a child up on a horse, because if something happens, they would spook and they'd run off in a flash. So yeah, but this just completely horizontal. And then he's carried this personality right through. And Nicky phoned me up when he's trotting around the school with 40 or 50 horses behind him, all clipping on his heels, going as slow as snails, because this fella's holding everything up. So he's asking me, what did I sell him? So I said, once you get him on the gallop, you'll know what I mean. So I think a few weeks later, he knew what I meant.
And your children are going to be able to get to Cheltenham? I don't want to cause any difficulties with their schools, but are they going to be able to get to Cheltenham to see this horse that once they were riding?
Well, I hope the school teacher isn't looking in, but if they are, we're all going to Cheltenham for a look. So they're looking forward to that now, as we all are. So it should be a great day. Hopefully we get the right result or just a good result. I want to see him run well, just to be involved. How
lovely is that? That's just a really nice, let alone racing, just a really nice sporting story, isn't it?
It is, and it's brilliant. They were there in December at Cheltenham before I retired. We brought them over early in the season just to give them a taste. We didn't dare bring them to the festival, but just haven't been able to do it this year. We obviously been off, having a bit more time, a more relaxed environment. So it's it felt like a good thing to do. So it's good memories.
So he's nothing special in the stables, but then he comes to life on the gallops, and at the races he comes right to life. It's an extraordinary transition by him.
It is, but he's physically he's impressive. He's not Bobsworth was very laid back, similar, maybe not so much, but Bobsworth was a little bit pony-like in ways. Where this fella has a presence, but he's a bit of a sleeping giant. When he comes alive, then his engine does purr.
Just pick up one word there, presence. So when people say in racing that a horse has a presence, what when a professional says that, like yourself, can you put that into words?
Yeah, it's just he would catch your eye. He would stand. He would pose. He's impressive. He looks the part. He knows he's good. There's just an aura about them.
And in terms of the Supreme Novice Hurdle, it's their first race of their meeting. People have been thinking about this race and all the races in the festival for months. You get that great roar. Him, maybe Nicky Henderson's John Bon in the field as well, maybe Dysart Dynamo for Willie Mullins. There will clearly be other big names as well. How are you seeing the race in the build up to it? Because you obviously examined it very closely.
Well, for one of the graded races, it's probably one of the most competitive. Dysart Dynamo, John Bon, Sir Gerhard, we're not sure what Willie's going to do yet, but he also has Kilcruff there, who is committed to the race. Last year's bumper winner. But you go out to Mighty Potter, who's a Grade 1 winner. You go to Three Stripes Life, who's 25-1, and he's been second in 2 Grade 1s. So there is serious strength and depth to this race. And you haven't got an awful lot of form to go on. So you have horses who may have improved from the runs earlier in the spring. And Constitution Hill has only had 2 runs, both in Sandown, coincidentally. But he did handle the hill well. It was on very soft ground, but better ground wouldn't be an issue to him, albeit he wouldn't want it fast or too good, which it won't be, because they're going to have watered it if it is that case, if it does dry, which is not likely at this stage. But it's a very competitive race. But what he's done to date, both in visual performance, but also the clock backs it up, he looks impressive. But it's definitely not going to be a walk in the park. I think it's one of the hottest races, and it's a great way to kick it all off.
And Constitution Hill you sold. Have you got anything else actually at the festival over the 4 days that you have sold?
No, I'll have my work done in the first race, so nothing else there.
You can relax then.
Well, I can relax to some degree. But no, I've nothing else. But hopefully we might have 1 or 2 more in the future.
And Barry, just before we go on to the Champion Hurdle, obviously you do a bit of punditry now. Do you do quite a lot of? I read an interview the other day. I have quite a few horses, or whatever. I have a few horses in. But is it quite a big operation you've got?
No, it wouldn't really be. I would be involved in 4 or 5 4-year-olds for this year, a couple of 3-year-olds for next year. I might buy another couple as well in the summer. So a couple of 5-year-olds still from last year. So it's not. I probably 4 or 5 a year. So I've been lucky enough with the numbers I've had to throw up a couple of smart ones.
Well, let's move on to have a word about the first day feature, the Champion Hurdle. Everybody talking about Honeysuckle, this brilliant, unbeaten Irish trained, British bred mare, but also Appreciate It, Tihupu, Epatante as well, a horse that you know really well.
Yeah, and obviously won a champion hurdle on her 2 years ago. I think she's been good this year. She would have improved a good bit from the fight in fifth. I thought she did well in Kempton, considering how keen she was at Christmas. She ran with the choke out through the race. The fractions, if you like, to the middle part were very strong. And she looked really good to somewhere between 2 out on the last, where her finish maybe just weakened a little bit. I think she paid the price for being so keen through the middle part and going hard. So, but for that reason, I thought it was a good performance. I think she'll run well. Obviously, Honeysuckle is going to be very hard to beat, and she is a superstar, and everyone wants to see her win for, I suppose, Honeysuckle herself, but for Rachel as well to experience a champion hurdle with the full crowd is going to be very different from last year. But Appreciated, I do like. He was probably the horse I was most looking forward to seeing going chasing this year. So that's obviously been put on hold. But Willie seems very happy with him, that he's made the right decision to not run him prior to Cheltenham. He's training him for the day, which I think is a wise decision, because he rules out the possibility of having a tough race on his build-up, which he might have to, it's hard to get a horse to recover quickly if he had a tougher time than he'd expected. But then you also bring in the bounce factor. So he's ruled out both of those. He's really happy with how the horse is. His time last year, the Supreme, was only 2 seconds slower than the champion hurdle, which is a good indication of ability. And he was such a smart novice last year. So I think he is the biggest test she'll have faced. And whether she can overcome it or not, we'll see. But he's of interest to me.
Hasn't run though for so long. That's going to be. Although you make a very cogent point about the fact that you wouldn't want to run and have a hard race, but equally you haven't run at all for so long. That's going to raise a lot. My inclination is he'll either win the race or it just won't work as a tactic.
Yeah, maybe. I was second on My 10 to Yours to Annie Power, and he hadn't ran for donkeys. It could have been a year or 2 years before that. So, but like that, he did give a blow. So that is the negative. But Willie went back year after year with Vega and her annual trip to Cheltenham. So it's worked in the past. And I don't think you need to tell Willie Mullins how to train a horse.
Indeed not. Epatante and Constitution Hill and John Bon, all trained by Nicky Henderson. As we sit here now, the winners haven't exactly been pouring out of Seven Barrows of late. In fact, it's been a very rare barren period. Would that be a concern to the many Henderson fans who'll be looking at his runners throughout the week because he's had so many winners over the years?
It would be. It's you couldn't but I suppose if he gets a score on the board early in the week, that'll put that to bed. I don't think the horse will run him badly. Maybe not just as many winners. So it will be interesting to see, but it's a slight question mark. But I know I get good vibes. There's a positive vibe from the yard. So I think they're fairly optimistic.
And then they've got Shishkin in the Queen Mother Champion Chase on day 2. Shishkin against Unergaman at Ascot was a race away from the festivals for the ages, wasn't it? It was billed as an epic encounter between these two great horses, and neither let us down. And it wasn't decided till the final strides.
I know, it lived up, and it's rare that those big clashes live up to expectations, but that one really did. It was a brilliant race. I thought Nico was really good in Shishkin. He made that mistake. He was very patient on him. He didn't bustle him into the race. And I also felt that coming wide for fresher ground in the straight made a difference. An argument probably paid the price for going hard through the middle part. And I think he's a horse who possibly does a little bit too much through the middle part, and it just weakens his finish. So I think that's something that if they can keep a lid on him to that middle mile, I think they'll reap dividends for it in the finish. But Shishkin will be better going left-handed. The other part of the racing as well is Willie Mullins has mentioned Chacun Pour Soir, that he would be his choice every day of the week. So that's interesting. He had Alaho and Nube Negra a long way behind him in Punchestown in the champion chase there after last year's festival, after he disappointed. So if he can put a run together in England, he obviously disappointed the Tingle Creek with a hamstring issue back in December. So I think if he puts his best foot forward, he could run a big race. So he just adds another layer, but Shishkin is the one to beat and maybe hard to beat.
We're going to move on to the Thursday now and the Stayers Hurdle. And of the major races, the Stayers Hurdle with last year's winner, Florian Porter, horses like Champ for Nicky Henderson, Time Hill, Paisley Park, who's so popular, and others as well. Now, this is properly, you won this race 3 times, did you? 2 or 3 times? Twice, I think you won it, didn't you? What's your assessment of the Stayers Hurdle in 2022?
Yeah, I suppose you're going in with a lot of question marks over horses. Obviously, Champ, who was really impressed with Ascot, and then he got beaten by Paisley Park. He had Lisnigar Oscar alongside him that day, who hasn't been in brilliant form either. So I'm not sure we saw the Champ we saw in Ascot at Cheltenham. So I have a question mark about him. He disappointed in the Gold Cup last year, having run well in the Game Spirit on his first run. So Champ really needs to get back to the Ascot form, but whether he will remains to be seen. Classical Dream then got beaten in Gorham Park. Really disappointed, having put up a brilliant performance when beating Florian Porter at Leopardstown. So he needs to bounce back from that as well. Florian Porter is favoured because he hasn't left the stable since Christmas, really. But he was a great winner last year, and especially as a 6-year-old, he is open to improvement this year. So it's a tricky race. Paisley Park has to have a chance. He loves it around Cheltenham, but I do feel it's possibly a slightly stronger race this year than it has been. Time Hill probably falls into the Paisley Park category for me. So if Champ can recapture his form, definitely has a big chance. But for me, Florian Porter and Classical Dream are the 2 to be keeping an eye on, with a slight preference maybe for Classical Dream.
And Classical Dream's the one that it sparks a million spelling mistakes, doesn't it? Because it's spelt with a K, Classical Dream. But funnily enough, of all the horses I've heard talked about over the days leading up to Cheltenham that aren't the obvious ones, aren't the Honeysuckles and the Shishkins and the Aplutars, if you like, and the Galvins, it's Classical Dream that gets mentioned time and time again. So perhaps that is one to have a real scrutinize of.
Yeah, well, he's a Supreme Novice Hurdle winner. He has a lot of pace. He won in Leopardstown from the front, which wasn't the plan. So I think if he gets away 4th, 5th, 6th and settles there, and they can ride a race on him with the pace he's shown as a novice a few years back, I think he could be hard to beat, having proved he stayed as well as he did in Leopardstown.
Just before we go on to the Gold Cup, if there was one other horse to sort of pick out that we haven't mentioned, a lot of people talking about the Turner's Chase, where they're expecting to see Bob Ollinger and Galopin Deschamps. But if there was one other horse sort of away from the real marquee races that you're particularly looking out for, what would that be?
I think Sir Gerhard and the Ballymore. That I feel that's the race for him. Dysart Dynamo and Sir Gerhard are the 2. The impression is given that it's one or the other for the Ballymore, and I think Dysart Dynamo, with the pace he shows and how keen he is, he would be better suited as Supreme. So if Sir Gerhard lines up with the Ballymore, I think he'd be very hard to beat. Well,
let's have a look at the Gold Cup then. And at the moment, people in on the British side of the Irish Sea are saying, look at the Gold Cup: Galvin, Aplutar, Minella, Indo, Album Photo. Oh, how far down before we can find a British horse that we fancy to give them any sort of race? Protectorate is the main British hope ahead of Chantry House, but this is an Irish. This is just waiting for the Gold Cup to be wrapped up in the Irish tricolour, isn't it?
I'm not sure. It's a competitive race. I think Protectorate and Chantry House are the 2 progressive horses, albeit Chantry House probably hasn't been as good this season as last season. But Nicky Henderson, he retains a lot of faith in this horse. He feels he's had a few little things he could work on and thinks he's in good shape. So he isn't without a chance on his form last season. Protectorate to me was really impressive in Aintree, considering how keen he was through the race. That shouldn't be an issue with the Gold Cup with the pace to go. It's going to be so competitive. So I think it is an open race. Manila Indo was a good winner last year, and I think he had a bit in the tank. He had his ears pricked and he was only doing as much as he had to. So Kempton wasn't his track, and I didn't really fancy him going into the King George. I wasn't surprised that it was going to be hard work for him. So he showed a return to form to some degree the last day in Leopardstown. But he's probably unlucky not to be 3 from 3 at the festival. He seems to come to himself this time of year. So for me, he's the 1 to beat still. Galvin is a horse who's improving as well the whole time. I think he's a big chance. Aplutard, I do like, but I just wonder, has he got the resolution for 3¼ miles around Cheltenham when it comes to it? So it's a very open race. You can make cases for so many, but I'm inclined to stick with Manila Indo. As I said, I think he had a little bit left up the sleeve last year.
So if I could wave a magic wand, I could take you back 2 years. I'm going to wave this wand for you, Barry, take you back to your riding days, and you can have the pick of anything in the Gold Cup. It would be Minella again, would it?
I think so. I do think so, yeah. As I say, I wasn't surprised to see Kempton being a struggle for him, and it was good to see him coming back. And he wouldn't have been overly cooked for Leopardson on his next run because he would have had such a recovery after Kempton. Henry wouldn't have got the level of work into him that he would have liked. So I'd imagine it's a good bit of improvements to come from him on his last run.
And final thought, away from the Gold Cup, if I could wave this very busy magic wand again and take you back to your riding days and give you any horse at the 2022 festival to ride, what would the Barry Geraghty selection be?
Well, if the kids could manage riding Constitution Hill, I'd love to have a go on him as well then.
Lovely way to end. Barry, thank you very much indeed. Best of luck for the whole week, particularly though with your particularly special family connection to Constitution Hill. I imagine that's going to be a very special afternoon. So very best of luck, and very best of luck going to Cheltenham and enjoying it from the grandstand.
Cheers, Cornelius. Thank you very much. Thank you.